Hello, my name is Dr. Radford and I'm the assistant principal here at Raymond Park Middle School. I want to first welcome our 7th grade students into Raymond Park Middle School, and I want to welcome back our 8th grade students. The purpose of this video today is to talk to you a little bit about our Student Rights and Responsibility Handbook. And so right now, in your possession, you should have an orange copy of the Student Rights and Responsibility. It's important to have the orange copy because it is the most current copy and covers the years 2018-2019 school year. And so you should have that in your possession and be willing and ready to follow along with me here in just a little bit. I want to make you aware that if you're a 7th grade student, some of what I'm going to say may be new information to you because when you became a 7th grade student, you now are considered a secondary student. So congratulations, you've elevated yourself a little bit, but with that also comes a little bit more responsibility in how to manage your behavior and so forth. So the purpose of this video, as well as covering the student rights and responsibility, is to set out for you what it would look like in terms of what your rights as well as what your responsibilities are should you be involved in student misconduct. And so if you find yourself involved in student misconduct, one of the most important things that you need to know is that every student has a right to due process. And I'll talk about more in depth a little bit later what due process really means. But what you need to know, or what I want to point out now, is that due process, what that means is that every student has the right to due process. And what that means is that you will either have a verbal opportunity or a written opportunity, and in many cases you'll have both opportunities, written and verbal, to be able to tell your side of the story at the appropriate time. And I want to stress that part, at the appropriate time. And so just keep that in mind should you find yourself involved in student misconduct. The other thing that I want to do, or the other purpose of this video, is to kind of lay out what some of the codes of misconduct look like for you. Now, what I'm not going to do today is go through and read verbatim for you what the code is, what the definition is, what the levels are, and that sort of thing. I'm going to point that out to you so that you can kind of go back and read that for yourself at a later time if you feel the need to do so. So if you would, right now, turn in your Rights and Responsibility book with me to page 28. And on page 28, that starts all of the codes that any misconduct could fall under. And these are Indiana state codes. Any misconduct that you find yourself involved in, if it results in a referral, it will be reported to the state under that specific code. And so I will go through and kind of read some of the codes for you. It's going to be up to you to read the definitions, know what those levels are, and how that might relate to you if you find yourself involved in that, okay? So the first one, or before I even do that, the other thing that I want to point out is you're looking at a grid, and on the far left-hand side of the grid, you can see that all of our behaviors or all of our misconduct codes fall within our core belief. So, you know, with core, we always preach civility, order, respect, and excellence. Well, if you look to the far left, you're going to see what violates order, what violates civility, what violates, you know, the different core beliefs that we follow here at Raymond Park. And so Code 1 talks about possession or use of alcohol. Code 2 is drug paraphernalia and or lookalikes. Code 3, deadly weapons. Code 4, possession of a handgun. Code 5, possession of a rifle or a shotgun. Code 6, other firearms. Code 7, tobacco, possession of smoking materials. Code 9, legal settlement. Code 11, fighting. Code 12, battery or simple assault. Code 13, intimidation. Code 14, and now flipped over to page 30. Code 14, verbal aggression or profanity. Code 15, defiance of school personnel authority. Code 16, attendance, unexcused absences or excessive absences. Code 17, destruction of property or vandalism. Code 18 is theft and counterfeiting. Code 19 is sexual misconduct, offensive touching, offensive conduct, or offensive remarks. Page 31, there's a large code. Code 20 is technology misuse. Code 1021, non-deadly weapons or use of object as a weapon. On page 32, Code 1022, disruption of the school bus or unauthorized passage on the bus. Code 1023 is trespassing. Code 1024 is disruption of the orderly educational or disorderly conduct, terrorist threats or acts. Code 1025, gambling. Code 1026, harassment, hazing, defamation of character. Down to page 33, Code 1027, general classroom disruption. So there's a lot of things that fall under the general. Code 1028, tardiness or lateness. Code 1029, extortion. Code 1030 and below breaks down all the different codes that bullying can fall under. So bullying has separate codes all their own, which is an indication of how serious the state as well as we here at Raymond Park take that. And we would hope that no one will become a victim of bullying. And we certainly don't expect any of our students to participate or to be the aggressor in a bully situation. But Code 1030, physical bullying. 31 is verbal bullying. 32 is social relational bullying. Page 34, on Code 33, you've got electronic or written communication and bullying. Code 34 is combination of bullying, which means it's one or more of the ones that I've just listed. Code 1035 is the distribution of unauthorized materials. Code 1036 is fire and minor explosives. Code 1037, inflammatory actions or withholding information. And on page 35, Code 1038, loitering out of assigned areas. Code 1039, violation of dressing and grooming. Code 1040 is going to be cheating, lying, false statements, forgery, or plagiarism. And so those are the codes that can be violated. You're also going to look and see where the levels are. Each one of these codes can go anywhere from a level 1, and a level 1 is something that a teacher is empowered to address without the involvement of an administrator. But anything from a level 2 all the way to a level 6 or the school police officer being called, then at that point you're going to find yourself in contact with one of our school administrators. Now, if you would turn back to page 27 for me. Page 27 is going to talk to you. Now, we've covered what the codes of violation are. Page 27 is going to talk to you a little bit about what those consequences could be for those behaviors. And it is broken down into a grid similar to the ones beginning on page 28 to 35. This grid, however, breaks down the levels of support that you get, as well as the consequences that you might face as a result of violating one of the codes. And so you can look and see level 1, that's going to be something as simple as maybe a parent phone call. Teacher may be a little bit creative and have you do some other things like a writing assignment of a reflection paper or something along those lines. Maybe a lunch detention, staying after school, something like that. When you get to level 2, there are several options, and that doesn't mean that you're going to face all of those consequences, but you could receive one in that grid, or you can receive more than one. It really depends on the level of the behavior and the circumstances that surround it. And so if you're wanting to know, what would happen if I do this, that's a good place to look. Now, if you would flip to page 37 for me. 37, there again, it talks about due process and what due process is. And due process in a school is a little bit different than the due process that you would get if you were to violate a code or a law in the regular community. And so if you would go down to the third bullet, because as it relates to school, this is the one that I most often talk to students about. The third bullet reads, when a student is believed to have violated a rule or a regulation, he or she is confronted with that belief and then given the opportunity to respond to the accusation. And again, that can come in the form of written or verbal statements, and sometimes it comes in the form of both. It just kind of depends on the situation at hand. Then also, if you would skip down to, we just read the third bullet, so if you would go to the fifth bullet, it says, if expulsion from school is a recommended consequence, a hearing may be requested. So there again, that is part of the due process. So anytime myself or a teacher asks you to write a statement or ask you to tell us what happened, that is your due process. That is your opportunity to tell your side of the story. But again, has to happen at an appropriate time. Page 37 also breaks down what suspension and expulsion looks like in terms of what you could expect, as well as your rights and responsibility in that. If you find yourself facing a possible expulsion, you would definitely have a hearing to be able to share your side of the story, present any evidence that you have, as well as hear the evidence that is being brought against you. And so you can read a little bit more about that. Page 40, I just want to point out on page 40, school bus conduct as well as safety rules. The thing that I want you to know there is that you can read the safety rules and what the expectations are for yourself. But the thing I want you to know about that is you are considered to be, your school day starts from the moment that you leave your house on your way to the bus stop all the way in the afternoon until you go back into your home after school is out. And so from the time you leave your house in the morning until you get back to your house in the afternoon, you are really considered under school guidance or school jurisdiction. So any misconduct that you are involved in during that time frame, you are under the jurisdiction of the school to be able to receive school discipline, as well as if you are involved in an after-school activity, like if you stay after for basketball or you stay after for science Olympiad or some other school-related activity well into the evening. If it happens on school grounds or while you're considered to be in the school day, then you can receive some of the consequences that we talked about over on page 27. The rest of this, there are several highlighted topics on looking at personal property, dress and grooming habits, attendance, residency and custody. Some of these your social studies teachers are going to cover a few more things with you a little bit more in depth, but ultimately, again, it is up to you to be responsible for knowing what is in the handbook here. And I just want to also point out to make yourself very familiar with, on page 55, the network and internet access agreement that you agree to, because a lot of times students violate that and they say, well, I didn't know that it was a violation, and so I want you to know this year, I want you to have the heads up. Go ahead and peruse and look over page 55 so that you know what the expectations are when you are on Raymond Park Middle School or Warren Township internet access, and that you are agreeing to follow certain rules because some violations are much more serious than others, and some of them are even breaking laws, and you need to know that so that you can kind of steer clear of that. My belief is that the majority of Raymond Park Middle School students are going to have a great year, follow all of our rules and our guidelines, and it's going to be a great year. For that small percentage of students that find themselves outside of our rules and regulations, this book is one that you really want to get to know. Having said that, I'm going to leave you to sign the form. Make sure that your teacher gets that. When you get to your social studies class, when you rotate into your social studies, they will hit, or you're actually probably already in your social studies, but your social studies teachers are going to hit some of these other areas a little bit more in detail for you. And so thank you for your time and your attention. And I would say just make it a great year of learning here at Raymond Park Middle School. Have a great year. Thanks.